That moves us to our action agenda. Do we have any motions on items discussed in executive session?
Madam Chair, I move to approve selected employment items shown in Exhibit A.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All opposed? And the motion carries 7-0.
Make a motion to approve services of Stan Tucker outlined in Exhibit C.
Second.
All in favor? And the motion carries 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the Richland County sewer easement and City of Columbia water easement shown in Exhibit D.
Second.
All in favor? And the motion carries 7-0.
I make a motion to approve moving forward with legal action discussed in Exhibit F.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? And the motion carries 5-2.
Is that, we didn't need anything else, did
No.
we?
No.
Okay.
That moves us into our discussion agenda, starting with discussion around the adoption of updated educational structure and redistricting. I can't get that out tonight. Dr. Ross?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. Today I want to begin a conversation that we have been dealing with in the administration since the redistricting plan. As you're aware, that parents are the drivers of educational choice, and we are learning that as we build these models, it may work for 98% of our students, but for the parents that it doesn't work for, they remind us that it's about my child and their experiences. And so our goal is, in drawing these lines, over 750,000 different plots go into drawing the lines. We do not get to 100%. And how do we meet that notion of every child's, every parent's expectation that this works for my child? And so in our work, we have talked about how do we create an environment where every child feels loved in our schools and have academic growth in our schools. And we're able, through our strategic plan, to measure these outcomes. We can actually plot our schools based on these experiences through our strategic plan. And schools are going to fall in one of 4 categories: the low love and low grow area, the high love and low grow area, the low love and high growth, and where we want all of our schools to be in the high love and the high grow area. And one of the things that we're realizing is that where we start losing enrollment is really where you have areas of low love and low grow as measured by our strategic plan. Interesting enough, high love and low grow maintains its students, but the quadrant of low love and high growth seems to lose students as well. But we want all of our schools in our district to be in that area where, through the strategic plan, they have high growth academically, and the educational experience is measured by the parents. You saw what the teachers did, but it's measured by the parents, puts them in that top right quadrant. And so one of the reasons that we speak so much about the programs that we're placing in our schools is that the structure was just not enough. It's really about the programs that we have. We see that middle school experience as an area that we really wanted to target. And to that end, our structure, as we move from this model, we're seeing that our intermediate schools were collectively struggling to get into that high love, high grow area. And it's not through a function of the work they do, it's just the structure that they're placed into. So with this year being the last year of this model, we'll move to what we promised in the referendum. In the referendum, we would have all of our elementary schools. I don't want to call Rick out, but Mr. Howell and I have always talked about this league of elementary schools that would build up and complete our district and get that involvement in. But one of the things that we saw in this as we started to overlay our programs on top of this structure is that we were missing that connection again. And we have two split feeders in this model. The split at the middle school level is at Crossroads Middle. Former Crossroads Intermediate, when it goes to Crossroads Middle, it will split into Dutch Fork and to Irmo. And we try to get rid of that split, but it would put too many students at either one of those schools, so we maintain the split. But there was another split at Ballantyne. And Ballantyne going into two different middle schools created just that tension there at the elementary school of creating a better K-12 flow. Who's taking care of these students, who's looking after, who's making those connections. It is easier programmatically to reduce these splits, especially at our elementary. And so what we are proposing, this is not for action, this is for continual discussion, but this is level one of the discussion, is to remove one of the splits. And we chose the one that would fit in terms of the number of students. So it works operationally and it works programmatically. And that is to go to this model where Ballantyne Elementary does not split. It feeds directly into Spring Hill Middle. We looked at, could we put H.E. Corley back into Dutch Fork to prevent that split? And that just made Dutch Fork Middle School too big of a middle school to operate 6th, 7th, and 8th. But with this model, this split, we feel like it works in terms of flow. But it's still the question, while it may work for 98%, what about that 2%? So what we want to propose, and we will bring in a more robust way for our next discussion on this, is what we have offered through the referendum informational was called preferred choice. Preferred choice is a option for families that have been moved out of their previously zoned school into this new structure. If they want to go back to their school, pending that room there, and with the referendum making larger buildings, we have more propensity for more room at the schools to allow them to choice back to that school. But there's one area that we have not been able to make this work with. And I just wanted full disclosure, that's the Salem Church Road. I think we handled the Mount Vernon. I said that yesterday, it's the Salem Church. I apologize. Mount Vernon we handled in the last iteration. It was the Salem Church Road area. Those families have been rezoned twice. They were initially, I'm looking at Dr. Harris to make sure I'm right, they were initially Ballantyne and Dutch Fork Middle, and they have been now rezoned to H.E. Corley and Crossroads. And for those families, I asked special permission of this board to provide what's called preferred pathways. We want to discuss it tonight, draw it up at our next meeting. But preferred pathways would allow those families impacted by the rezoning. So if you move in after the rezone takes effect, it doesn't apply to you. But if it's before, you're eligible for the pathway. And the pathway allows you back into the two schools you were rezoned from, Ballantyne and to Dutch Fork, pending the room. So I just wanted, we're going to go through this slowly, but we feel like this gets us to addressing 100% of our families. That area of Salem Church Road was the kind of the last part that if we start moving lines again, we go from impacting 75 or 78 students to another 278. So I wanted to just share these two slides with you. It doesn't redraw any lines, but it allows us to provide for those families that were rezoned, but make a special opportunity for those families who were rezoned twice. Now, parents that say, I'm at Ballantyne, I want my child to go to Dutch Fork Middle, preferred choice is available for you. But for those who are rezoned twice, we wanted to create a preferred pathway where once in, they know that their child is set for elementary and middle school. So that's all we have for tonight. Again, this will be, we don't want to throw too much at you versus this. It's not redrawing the lines. The structure's still the same, but we think the programs and how we are addressing the students, how we make the connection 5th and 6th grade will be stronger with this model.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
More of a comment, I guess, is I'm a little concerned about what this could do to ultimately the enrollment of Chapin High School, because this model, I believe, was already going to put more, the model that the board voted on, I think is already going to put more students ultimately at Chapin High School than there is today, and this would move even more. So before we vote on it, can we get the actual numbers that show? Because I think the last time I looked, Chapin High School was just barely under the projected, the maximum capacity. So I agree with you. It's never even fun to move attendance lines, and I just would hate to do something and then realize 3 years down the road, oops, especially since I believe we have multiple neighborhoods, even one directly across from the high school going in Chapin.
No, I think that is very fair. I think we want to provide all of that before it comes to a vote. We'll have multiple discussions on it. We just wanted to present this, and also, full disclosure, those families want to hear that we're talking about it as well. And so we missed last week's. We told them that we're going to bring this to you. We'll have those numbers. And also, I wanted to know that, too, as we look in this model, we have, and that's the part that I have to prove, right? The burden of proof is on us, but that Spring Hill still stands available with the removal of the Academy for Success to relieve Chapin High. And again, I know that's not directed, but in the era of choice, it is very hard to see that. But you're right, we do owe those numbers there.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, Ms. Huddle.
One question, and this actually goes way back. I was just wondering if at some point we could talk about the naming of Spring Hill Middle, just because I think it may cause us problems down the road if it has the same name as the Magnet High School. And before we get too far into, ordering signs or what have you, I just think we should talk about it.
Just as a timeline thing for the board, this will come before you pretty soon, so you will have an opportunity, because they're going to bring both name change schools, which are Spring Hill Middle and Crossroads, will bring to you mascots, color schemes, naming, all of that for you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. That takes us to Ms. Tucker for the next two items of discussion, starting with the district attorney list for 25-26.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have before you tonight the list of attorneys proposed for FY 25-26. This is the same list of attorneys that we have for the current fiscal year. There are no changes proposed to this. This is just a requirement of board policy to bring this before the board for consideration every year. So I'll stand for any questions.
Do we get, oh, I'm sorry.
No. It was just some of I think two of the firms didn't have any lawyers listed. Is that standard just to keep them on there, or?
They have been on our list, I guess, available if we need them, but we have not used them this year, but they are still on our approved list.
Do we require that these firms update us? Like, so when this list comes before us, is somebody checking to make sure all these attorneys still work there?
last year, but honestly, I looked at them this year for the attorneys that we've used, but they're still, it's the same list.
Okay, and it's weird. I only ask because by virtue of where I work, I know under the first listing that one of those attorneys doesn't work there anymore, but we can talk about that offline.
All right, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Sorry.
Actually, kind of to both of those, I think the board policy says that we appoint attorneys, not firms. So one thing to think about is to take the firms off
And just have
and just
names.
list the attorneys, maybe in alphabetical order or something. And that way, if an attorney that we do work with moves, we don't have to have a board meeting to re-approve this list if we've just listed the attorneys and not the firms. So just a thought.
I'm just thinking through, since we would be under contract with the firm though, and not the attorney specifically, we might have to look at the details of that, but I see where you're going with that.
We're in discussion, so we have a time to come back and look at
Absolutely.
that. Very good.
And I'm sorry I didn't catch that before. It's just a fluke. I know like 3 people on here, and he was one of them, so, all right. Thank you. We have any other questions on this? Ms. Barnhart?
Just a quick one. I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but there is no kind of funding that's going towards these two that have no attorney on record in 15 years? Okay, just making sure.
Any other questions? All right, do you want to move to your next item, Ms. Tucker?
And our next item is the procurement review panel. Again, this is an item that comes before the board for approval every year. The procurement review panel is in section 4410 by South Carolina Code, something that we must have. It is by appointment. A board appointed the chair, who will chair the panel, and then 4 persons shall be appointed, one by the chair of the board, the vice chair of the board, the superintendent, and the chief business official. I will say that this procurement review panel has not met in my time here this year, but we have reached out to all of these members. They are all willing to serve, and then the board would need to elect a chair for this year. So,
And by policy, we can only have 1 board member on this committee, right?
Yes.
Somebody asked.
yes, by policy, the board would appoint a chair for this committee, and then it is 4 members of the community appointed by those, the 4 that are outlined in the policy. Excuse me.
Thank you.
And I know there was a question last year. None of these members do any business with the district. We do not have any contracts with them or any of the firms that they work for. One is an engineer, one is the procurement director at another school district around the Midlands, and then 2 are community members. So,
Do we have any questions? All right, and then that'll take you to your 3rd item on the list. Thank you.
all right. And last up for discussion is our FY 25-26 general fund budget discussion. I will not go through all of these slides as we have in the past, but I want to just hit a couple of highlights. Since we met last, the governor has signed into law the budget. There were some changes between the House and the Senate versions and what conference approved. There was some additional funding in the conference approved budget. Okay. As if today couldn't get any better. Make sure my fans are turned off. Are we good?
Oh, yeah, we're in the box.
We're in the box.
We're in the tornado box.
Right, duck and cover, okay, well. So just to let you know, our budget was built on the House version, which is about $400,000 less than what was the final version approved. That is kind of the max that we could potentially get. So we are not guaranteed the $4 million from the state, which would be 4.4 if we were to go with what was approved by conference. So just know that that is one change that has changed since the last time we talked about this.
Dr. Ross, I'm sorry, but that's right on top of us.
Okay.
We gotta get away from these windows.
All right.
Community, we are under a tornado watch. We ask that you step away from any glass or windows. You want to be protected by interior wall structures. You can come close. This is old family style, and then the facility will be available to you for the duration of the tornado drill. So, we're going to continue with the meeting in this structure, and so, Madam Chair, is your meeting.
Ms. Tucker?
In the absence of slides, I will take any questions about the budget book that y'all provided, or any questions about.
I sent you an email, because I tried to add up the numbers of the additions and then compare it to the slide that showed the additional amount of money available. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at that yet, but one added up to 14 million, and the other was 10 million.
Correct, and so the $14 million was the total increases, and there was a slide that showed some savings. We also went through and looked at kind of our actual HR expenditures, our actual personal expenditures, since that really is 88% of our budget. So we try to take actual expenditures and kind of pare that down to take some savings for this year. So our total increase was the 14, though but with some savings, we only had to ask for an additional $2 million.
I was just saying, so it could be something like a position that's been vacant for a long time, so you guys just took it out?
Correct. And most of those we had identified, some of it was just truing up the budget. There's been multiple people in this position for the last few years, and so some of it was just some cleanup that needed to happen. So, but your other question was about the student nutrition positions. So those are all funded with not general funds. They're all USDA funds. And we actually have a surplus in our USDA funds, and so we wanted to try to make some accommodations to try to spend down the USDA funds so that we're able to retain these positions.
And then I think it was page 2 after that, questions on the, like, the totals that they have from, I think the maintenance teams, that $400-something thousand. How did you get to that total? It had, I think, 6 positions. Is that including like the benefits?
That is including their benefits. The total dollar amounts that are in the projected salaries for the maintenance team that had the supervisors and the maintenance staff. So that includes not only their salaries, but their retirement, their FICA, their benefits. We average retirement, average benefits for all of those positions. So that's the total compensation package, which is about 30% over the salaries.
Was that 4 total positions, or was it, or was it 6?
It was two teams, if I'm wrong, it was 2 teams with 4 positions in each.
Correct, there's 6 total, 3 on team 1, 3 on team 2. Each team is led by a maintenance, and then the maintenance person has 2 custodians.
Is that the normal structure, or is this something special?
That's a good question. So this is not normal. Typically, our maintenance teams are working on all of our dashboard or work order pieces. Our custodians are under the lead custodians at the school. What we're finding is that as our maintenance teams are running through the work order systems, anytime there's an issue, they get pulled off of the work orders to start handling issues. The quick response team is, it's basically clean up on ourselves. We got a leak over here that needs to be taken care of. When they're not on call, they can be doing painting or aesthetic things. So we can deploy this group, it's kind of like Certicore, we can deploy them to the areas that we need them the most and keep the maintenance staff on those work orders. We're just finding every day we're struggling to get through the work order piece because of the daily things that are popping up. We initially started out with 1 response team per cluster, and that got too costly. So we skimmed it down to 2. We're going to cut the district in half. Team 1 will have half of the facilities in the western area. Team 2 will have half of the facilities in the east. And they're on those daily calls so that our maintenance team can stay focused on those work orders.
And are those 240, or what's the number, how many months out of the year, days out of the year when they work?
They're 240.
All 240.
So like in the summer, I know that stuff happens, that's probably not as much, will they do the exact same thing in the summer, or will they have like different?
So we would hope we would get to beautification in the summer, where we can get to the painting items, to those touch-up things, the grounds. I think for the foreseeable future, they'll still be doing work order piece. So now we can release them to go back into work orders and then try to knock those things down so that we can get back to zero.
And there was some discussion about the counselors. I know there were 6 positions, there's about 36K. Is that just like part-time, like as needed, or?
So we're bringing back the clinical counselors. We had 9 positions. We cut 3, so now to the 6. These are the 6 that are currently employed. We keep them at their same rate.
So, but Emma has 36, so that, that doesn't make, you know what I'm saying?
So-
$36,000 for 6 people.
So,
No.
I was gonna say, I think that might be of this type. That was where we had the line for the executive directors, and that position, that came out, that was the cut. And so the clinical counselors, we were able to add that back in by cutting that and then truing up some vacancies.
Okay.
Savings for those. So I think that's the type.
Okay.
And those clinical officer positions that come back, they'll just be permanent positions?
If approved, they go into recurring funds, so they're recurring every year. Yes, ma'am.
And how many are, like, district-wide, what's the distribution, or will be the distribution of the counselors? Are they one per school, or is there so many per cluster?
Dr. Harris?
Come on down.
Come on down, this is like a Soul Train line. Come on.
Like the move.
I apologize. With the questions about the distribution of the clinical counselors, how are they allocated out to schools?
Currently or based on the proposal?
Proposal.
Based on, well, we're gonna have to take a look at that. But I can tell you, based on the number of schools, they will just try to divide them out evenly and divide them out evenly in terms of levels as well, so there's a balance. We try to keep them as close to working with the families that they're currently working with. It's those kind of considerations that we're looking. I mean, obviously, the caseload's gonna be much.
Is there at least one per school, or is it less than one per school on
Clinical
average?
counselor, no, one per, not at all.
Less than one, or more than one?
There's only 6.
Yeah, there's only
No, I meant in total. Don't we already have some that the 6 are on top of, or the 6 gonna be the only 6?
No, it's gonna be the only 6 that we have,
Okay.
yeah.
How do we, I got some emails from people, and it seemed like that they were primary care for certain individual students, which is wonderful, but if you only have 6, I don't see how we can do that. So how do we make sure that, where's the line, I guess, between what they do and when they refer, so that there is enough of them to be able to support every student that might need their services?
But we're obviously gonna have to restructure a lot of what they do and how they do it. And I don't have that plan obviously at this point, but I do know that that's gonna have to take place in order to meet as many of the needs for as many of the students and families as we possibly can.
Can I ask you a question? Are they gonna just develop caseloads so they may have to go from one school to
Oh, they will. They will. I mean, they're currently doing that.
That's what they're
That will
doing now.
continue.
And I know that because my son, signed him up, probably isn't the right word, but I've asked the school counselor to talk to him before, because I felt like maybe he wouldn't talk to me about some stuff. And she can only see him like once a week,
Right.
sometimes every 2 weeks. And so it definitely doesn't solve our problems, but also.
Well, sometimes the perception is well, your school has it, why can't my school have it?
Right.
So,
We don't
just,
have the people there.
yeah, well, I understand it, but just making sure that people understand that they could be going from one school to the next to meet the needs of
I
each
know that's
school.
what
And they will have, I think the operative word is they will have access to, not necessarily a one-to-one assignment, one counselor per school, but access to it. And it's not just in case, it may be once a week, on designated days.
Sure.
And each counselor will have, just off the top, at least 3 schools or so, probably, maybe in some cases 4, and that's gonna be.
That's how school psychologists in the past have done it.
Right.
So, you know.
I was just wondering if they were more like almost of a triage, because there are so many students compared to the numbers, so that they handle like emergent situations, you know, like a suicide attempt or suicidal ideation,
I can
that
tell you
kind of
right-
thing, and then find the right person to help them long-term.
Yeah, so I can tell you from personal experience, LC Greenland, because I wanted a school counselor, and I didn't even know why. Just being transparent. Noah I felt like we were getting some calls about some things that were just not on brand for him. He's my overachiever, good kid, so something, and I thought, well, maybe something's going on, and I'm talking, he's the oldest of 4. I've been the oldest kid, so and I just thought maybe it would be helpful to have somebody else, and so even at that level, they'll talk to them, and our issue isn't emergent, and so it's like how many of them are small scale things like that, and then how many are, like to your point, maybe more high level issues, but I'm somebody who would also use insurance and get more help if we need it. And I don't know if maybe from some of those emails, can everybody not do that? I don't know, because I got some of those too, who were very worried about being able to provide those resources, which is also kind of scary, because if they can only see them 1 week a week and it is emergent, at what level do they report back to somebody on that? If they think there's a greater need, like what if anything is the process of that?
It's going to require some restructuring in terms of what we do and how we do it. That's for sure.
Just so that we can clarify now, for the families that have and students that have existing relationships with the 6 remaining, they will definitively have the ability to remain with that particular counselor moving forward, as long as, and I'm talking about the existing relationships.
Every reasonable attempt to do just that. While keeping in mind we want to try to meet as many needs as possible. Every reasonable attempt.
I think that triage word is what they're doing such a great job at. Our school counselors, prior to the EEDA, did not have the requirements of the IGPs. It just led them to a lot of time to do these things. Now it's a referral system, so having this extra layer, initially we had 9 with COVID. We're gonna ask the board to fund the 6 that are still here. The 3 that left, we took those positions for other things, but with that 6, that's where you're getting those calls from. And so Dr. Harris, like you said, he's trying to triage some of the cases. Suicide ideation is real, so it'll go straight to that if that's the piece that we get. Then they got a triage of other things of based on harm. So as we deal with increased levels of anxiety and those things, this is a great level to have. Yes, you have your counselors, but because of their workloads and things like that, this is another layer. So we do appreciate that consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
So switching gears, speaking to the fund balance, there was, when we increased the percentage that we're holding, are we maintaining levels with that, what was it, 7 million, something like that we're gonna need for the November, payments, some of the NERI?
So if we have the funds available, we have proposed having the $400,000 set aside for the NERI payments, 3.5 for capital expenditures, potential future capital expenditures, and $3 million for the employee retention incentive that would be in November with the American Education Week. So that would still keep us in line with what the new board policy is for the 17 to 20%.
I have to ask this because I know she's watching me, but I got a call from a substitute. She said she's been a long-term sub for a number of years, former teacher, that sort of thing, and just really wanted to know when we were gonna take a look at an increase of pay for long-term subs. And I don't know anything about how that pay scale works, or now is even time for that conversation, but would like us to talk about that.
No, we have the sub-plan.
The sub-plan is in here.
Is in this budget.
It's
so
in
we
this
wanna talk
budget,
about
but
it.
the long-term subs, and I might need Dr. Turner to weigh in here. Long-term subs their pay is calculated differently because it's based on their years' experience there, correct me if I'm wrong, there, it's based on where they fell in the teacher pay scale when they left.
So if it's related to retirees, I think a point of confusion is that retirees have two options to be certified. The current retiree certificate, it doesn't have a certification area, and so they don't qualify to be paid at the certified rate of pay if they long-term sub. One pending change is the new retiree certificate. Under the new retiree certificate, that will add an opportunity for them to add their certifications back on to their certificate if they've met the qualifications to do so. So I didn't want to confuse the long-term sub-payment for retirees raising those questions. It's likely because they don't have the appropriate certification as a retiree to be certified. You have to be certified in order to get the certified daily rate of pay. As a substitute, yes.
Even if they had already been.
Even if they had already been a certified teacher, if they no longer have their teacher certification, they have a retiree certificate, that retiree certificate does not have a certification area on it. And so that's the question that you all keep running into. It's not about long-term pay, it's they don't have the certification to get the certified rate of pay. But with the release of the new retired educator certificate that just came out under the release laws, they may be able to add those certifications back to their certificate if they have maintained the credentials to do so.
But they can only get it if they're long-term subbing in that area, is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. In order to qualify, you have to be certified on the certificate, and you have to long-term sub in the area that matches the certification on your certificate.
And that's a state issue, not a D5.
Yes, that's a state issue, not a D5 issue. We referred several retirees with that question directly to the Department of Education, and that's a consistent message across the board. But again, there's hope with the retired educator certificate that's coming out. If they qualify to get their certification added back to their certificate, they would qualify for certified rate of pay in those long-term positions.
Do we see teachers that are having to serve as long-term subs in other areas that they were not certified in? So for example, if they go in long-term sub in their certified area for a while and then they're needed somewhere else, are they going to get two different rates of pay?
Yes, that's right. And again, our board's administrative rule, we adopted the administrative rule when we transitioned to the ESS staffing for substitutes. So with that administrative rule, it specifically says that you have to be certified in the area. So that's a consideration for the board, if that's ever something that you all want to revisit in terms of flexibility for that pay. If they do have to move to an area for which they're not certified in a long-term position. I also want to make sure too that we're clear that we are not attempting to hire certified retirees for vacancies. That's another point of confusion. We don't want to do anything to give the perception that we're trying to circumvent the retirement system. So something else that comes up is we never pursue retirees to hire through a substitute agency for the purpose of circumventing PIVA and retirement. Our priority is always to hire retirees as LOA. So I'm sorry, but I know that's
But that was useful information for me, thank you. Yes.
Well, one other thing I would like us to look at is the stipends. I saw in there, there's an amount to increase the stipends for band, but I looked and our stipends for especially academic areas, but lots of areas haven't changed since 2017. And so if we're going to look at band, I think we look at the AP coach, the SAT coach, the chorus, all of that. I really think we need to look at all of them, especially on the athletics too. Some of them are so low, especially the lower end. I don't know how you get anybody to do it. It's just, so I really would like to see us look at it because it's been a long time.
I would like to look at stipends as a whole, and I really think we would need like a whole committee to look at this, and I think it would take longer than, I think if we started now, we can have something really great for the budget for next year, and I think it's gonna take some time. to look at what we have as far as the budget going into next year, but also to do the time and research on what's around us. Because I've looked at some other schools, and like you said, there's some schools, districts have a 12-page book that outline lots of different things. And so I think that would be something that we could, if the board would bless me, putting together a committee to start looking at this for next budget season, so we can be competitive with our districts around us. But I think the funding's gonna have to go with that, and I think that might be a budget increase, if that's the priority of the board for.
Well, I just wonder if we might should wait to do any of them until we do that. It concerns me that we pull one out as in band. And, you know, the classic is gonna be, well, what about orchestra? Well, what about chorus? But it's, you know, and I almost feel like we ought to just wait for all of them if we can't do, you know, anyway.
Any other questions or comments?
Under the proposed millage, I think it's 261, with, I think it's 8 million something in revenue, with factoring in grade, you know, they're probably gonna be fully enrolled, whatever it's 400, 600 students. Are we feeling good about that covering our needs if we lose any sort of, you know, state funding?
So we will know going into 10 days into next year kind of what our projections look like. And I mentioned at the very beginning, before the tornado drill, we based our budget based on the first House version. So the Senate version was a little bit higher with some of those changes to the funding formula. So we have a very conservative estimate going into the budget. But I do think that that's something that we'll have to look at based on what our numbers look like at the 10-day. And if we have to come back with a budget amendment, we're going to know that at the very beginning of school. So we'll start looking at those, you know, what those numbers look like as we start school year next year. So, but we do have a conservative estimate going into this budget.
Anybody else? Make a motion?
Madam Chair, I have a motion. We adjourn this hallway meeting at 9:20 p.m.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Y'all have a good night.
Madam Chair, we are out of the tornado now. I do let you know there's another sale coming. We will keep.